Good morning and welcome to this thought for the day for Monday. And today we're again in 1 Peter and it's chapter 4 and beginning at verse 1. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because he who has suffered in his body is done with sin. As a result, he does not live the rest of his earthly life for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They think it strange that you do not plunge with them into the same flood of dissipation, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached, even to those who are now dead, so that they might be judged according to men in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the Spirit. The end of all things is near. Therefore be clear-minded and self-controlled, so that you can pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each one should use whatever gifts he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, he should do it as one speaking the very words of God. If anyone serves, he should do it with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power for ever and ever. Amen. It's a great passage and a great inspiration for us. And there's a contrast between two ways of life. There's the old way of life and there's the new way of life. And the difference between the two is Jesus himself. So at the very beginning of the passage, in the first verse, therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves with the same attitude, because of what Jesus has done for us, because of his life of service exemplified in the cross, we should follow his example. And although we may not consider ourselves to have lived the pagan life that Peter describes quite to the extent that he talks about, I hope that we can all agree that we aspire to the sort of life that he describes. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. And then he speaks of the way in which we are called to use the gifts that we're given to glorify God. And he follows that same pattern that we are familiar with from Paul, of speaking of the different gifts that we've been given as Christians and of our use of them in God's service. And as we look around us in the Christian community, we can see that there are people around us who make a difference. And I hope that we aspire to be among them. As we look at them, we are reminded of Jesus, and we receive the benefit of knowing them and of being in their company. We receive from them as they use the gifts that they have, maybe practically, maybe spiritually, maybe in other ways. But they are people who make a difference. They make a difference to us, they make a difference to the church community as a whole, and they make a difference particularly to the society within which they live. And that's the life that we're called to, and I hope we're inspired by them, and I hope we're inspired by Peter and his description of the life that we're called to. As he says, the end of all things is near. And so we're reminded that there is a certain degree of urgency, that we should live in a way that draws other people to Jesus and exemplifies his qualities into the world in which we live. So I hope as we read these words, and they are a reminder to us, that they will help us to be people who make a difference. They'll inspire us for the lives that we try and live this week. So God bless you, and have a great week.